First, see, we're already off to a hot start. All right, so first time, 2025 AD, here with my man Aaron Dwyer. My name's David Huffaker. We are both business professionals in Nashville, Tennessee, and our job is to give top producers and mega agents options when it comes to their business. So, Aaron, thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, David, I appreciate the invite, man. It's always a pleasure to get to hang out with smart people. It's always a good time. So I appreciate the invite and look forward to it.
I'll see if I can go find some smart folks to hop on here with us so we can live up to that. Now, Aaron and I have had a chance just to connect a lot lately, and we both spend time loving on agents, coaching agents, helping agents get better into their business. And so we're just going to hop on and kind of see how this goes. So again, first time for us doing this. So if it's awesome, it's awesome. If it's not, nobody's going to watch it and it ain't going to matter, right? So here's what we were talking about, right? When we started talking about what are the topics or the things that we could discuss openly that would maybe add value to some agents' lives right now. We know it's currently, February 2025, interesting market, pros and cons of all that. But the thing we were talking about was you and I had a conversation around what are the 5 biggest mistakes we see agents making when they're under $10 million in production, right? So how do you think about that? When you start, number one, who do you see as that agent and what are you seeing as their struggles right now?
It's crazy. So I was just looking at some stats just two or 3 days ago. And, honestly, there aren't a lot of agents in that. I'll take that back. There are a lot of agents under 10 million, but the lion's share of them are like way under 10 million. So, to find that $10 million agent or that agent, let's just say 5 to 10 million, kind of the sweet spot, it takes effort. Like it's going to take some work. It's going to take some consistency before you build that 5 to 10 million dollar business. It's not just something that you can kind of just walk backwards into. I mean, it's going to take some effort in that. And so, looking at those numbers, how do we kind of twofold, Dave? How do we get agents from that this awful statistic that first year agents are making like less than $10,000 in gross commission a year, right? How do we get them from that awful spot to a place where they're doing 5 or 10 million a year, where now they can make some money and enjoy having this business? Um, so thinking about those agents, you know, I kind of kick it back to you. What do you see? Because interestingly, and I'm going to make sure this point gets out there. This conversation is between two real estate business owners in different brands, right? This is really an effort to try to raise the bar for everybody and not really brand specific. And so I just want you to know how much I appreciate this conversation, because there are a lot of people out there in this industry who don't like, they hold their cards close to their chest. They don't like to share the secrets. and
Yeah.
and so I just want to let you know I appreciate this and opening up this dialogue.
Well, and I think ultimately growth comes from within. Those that are concerned about, what color the sign is are going to be out of the business anyways, because it really doesn't. That's not, what serves you on your journey and helps you get stronger. When I think about the group of agents, right, the crazy stat, I'm still not sure, I believe it was 71% of agents didn't sell a house last year.
Isn't that
And I
crazy?
go like, there's that conversation between, 0 and 3 million is probably for a different time, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
for
I kind of
sure.
look at that and go, that's training, that's the basics, that's getting yourself into the business, that's avoiding, all the pitfalls. We know that 87% of agents fell out of the business in the first 2 years. Of the remaining percentage of agents stay in the business, 75% of those are out actually in the next 3 years. So in less than 5 years, a huge number of agents around. We want to kind of help maybe fix that, right? I'd love for someone to look up one day and say, what, because of David, because of Aaron, I actually was able to outlast the statistics and actually build a career worth having. So I think when we're talking specifically to agents that have done 5 million in production, at that point, you think about the triangle of what matters, right? At that point, you've somewhat figured out your lead source. Most agents in that bucket are probably pretty specific to their database, right? You hear a lot of them say like, well, I'm not really intentional about my business. My business just shows up. But also think about the agent specifically that's gotten in the business since COVID, because it's a very different agent who has understood and got in the business into 2022, into 2023, that didn't know the past, right? And so when I think about that, I go, for that specific agent, do you think that, what would you say to them? Is it more they're missing consistency, or they're missing structure, or are they just chasing shiny objects?
So if we're talking about, you talking about the agent who got in at COVID or one that's been in it for a minute? 'Cause I think there's two different avatars, right? To your point, I think the avatar for the agent that got in 2020 and 2021, good Lord, it was easy. I mean, it was just easy. And you really didn't have to have lead gen systems. You really didn't have to have your structures set in place. I laugh all the time that, one-armed ape walking backwards could to do real estate in 2020 and 2021. It just wasn't that hard. And so I think those agents who have been in it now 4 years, you're sort of in that 3 to 5 year window, right? Where you started where everything was gangbusters, and now you're coming on the back end of a market, which was probably the worst real estate market in recorded history, where we did less than $5 million nationally, or $5 billion, whatever that number was. I mean, it was 5 million transactions nationally. We're in a tough market, and so I think if let's talk about the avatar that's been in the business for a while. Let's talk about one that maybe got in the business before 20,
Okay.
and they've worked their way up to a point. They had some really good success in 2021. Those were their best years, and then what we have to do is obviously David pull those out, because that's an anomaly,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
now
it's
you're
interesting now we have enough data that if you chart it out from 2017 to 2024, if you drew a straight line, 2023 and 2024 fall in line with that trajectory. All you see is though 2021 and 2022 was this big spike, and so yeah, you got to be careful um, comparing everything to 21 and 22 and following that line, right? If you compare 2024 to 2019, you probably find that steady trajectory of
pretty
where
similar.
you
Yep.
should be. Yeah.
Yep. So looking at that, to what something you just said a second ago, I hear a lot of agents that I coach, especially agents that have been in the business for a while, that are relatively successful. They're in that $5 to $10 million range. Their statement is, most of my business comes from referrals. Most of my business comes from past clients. Most of my business, again, they're not out really diligently working new lead sources. They're not out diligently working new networking sources. And then at some point, those referrals start to dry up. Those same people, those numbers start to diminish over time, right? So I think one of the pitfalls for that agent is how do you keep your business new? How do you introduce new networks? How do you do things within your personality style, right? Because then, which is a different conversation, because if you're doing things outside of your personality style, you're not going to do it anyway, right? So finding new ways to introduce new networks, if it's with being in the business community, or having what I call a dirty dozen, and having 12 people that work around the real estate industry, who that you can get a one or two referrals from a year, that you're going to refer business to, they're going to refer business to you. I think that's for that agent that's been in it for a while. The challenge is not chasing AI, not chasing the shiny pennies, not chasing every lead source that's out there that says, hey, if you pay us this much money, we're going to get you this many leads. Those agents have leads,
Yeah.
right? They've got names in their phone. They've got people in their database. More times than not, they're not working their phone. They're not working their database. They're just kind of, I do referral business. People come to me. They just give me what they want when I want it. And what
Yeah,
are
I
your
think
thoughts on that?
the risk in that becomes, I do believe, like I've studied icon agents and I've studied what it looks like to build mega careers over 20, 30, 40 years. And for me, the challenge was I didn't want to wait 40 years in order to get there. So I want to go study what icon agents had done really, really well naturally and try to find ways to accelerate that. I do believe the database is the foundation of all of our businesses, right? Our family, our friends, I always say being human with our humans is the biggest piece of it. The challenge is that in 21 and 22, that was really easy because if you didn't like the color of your toilet, you could move, right? And you could probably make $200,000 doing it, right? Like you could make a lot of money. It was simple. Today, because most everybody have this lock-in effect with reasonable, everybody's in reasonable interest rates, especially here in our city around Nashville, we've seen prices go up pretty significantly. So you end up with our family and our friends right now are not maybe the ones that are moving the most, right? The people that we're used to getting that business from. And so you kind of go back to like, okay, now I have to be intentional. And that's where I find most of those agents fall off. And I guess the question for you is like, Is that okay, right? Should some agents honor where they're at, understand where they're at in the process? Look, if you can live a big life without intentionality around $7 million a year in sales, I think we should put out the fact like there's nothing wrong with that, right? To me, it's just is that what you wanted? Did you get it by defining it or did you get it by default? And as long as you're happy there, the question you and I think we're talking about this, and this is another piece. I think you kind of said like chasing a rabbit or a shiny object, right? Looking for leads, looking for a new thing versus just going with what's tried and true. Maybe is one of the mistakes we see them make. But the second piece around it is if I were to ask you which, most agents, which do you value more, time or money? I think their answer might be one thing, but I think their actions would show us that they value money, right? And that's like we're doing it, we're not getting leverage because we want the most amount of money. We're not investing in building our business because we want to keep the most we can out of our commission check. We're not going to an organization or hiring someone, a coach, because we don't want to spend the money. But if I were to ask you, well, which one is infinite and which one isn't, right? Like time is our most valuable resource. My challenge for agents right now is you say that most of the time because you know that's the right answer, but do your activities and does your business and your lifestyle reflect that time is your biggest asset? And are you doing things to understand that your ability to buy back your time and execute your business, focusing on the things that really matter, will ultimately make you the most amount of money? Right. I think
Yeah.
that's where I see a lot of my agents that I monitor or mentor just not being able to get out of the way of, well, of a commission check, I need to keep all of it.
Yep.
Right. Or the
Yeah.
more I can keep, the more money I make. And I go, you can either have a little bit of a lot or a lot of a little bit. And whichever method you choose to lean into, if you choose to take a lot of a little bit, that's where you're going to miss soccer games, right? You're going to miss date nights. You're going to miss doing the things in life that really matter, in my opinion, versus finding ways. I could cut my own grass. I love cutting grass, right? To me, it's actually fun. Put my headphones on, go out, ride around on a cool contraption. Like, it's awesome. Is it the highest and best use of my time? Absolutely not, right? I know what I make an hour. I know what I pay for someone else to do it. So I think that's one place a lot of people get this scarcity mindset of,
Oh my gosh, yes.
I can't go spend this money because I need to take it home, right? Do you see that in the people that you coach?
So I absolutely do because we again it goes back to the sowing and reaping, right? It goes back to these simple parables that we've been given forever. And understanding that the parable of the talents, not to get real religious, but in the parable of the talents, the one that held it all to himself and buried it wasn't appreciated. The king didn't appreciate that, right? He was rebuked for that. And I think we run into that same thing a lot of times in like to your point. I'm going to go back to something you said earlier. A lot of this is all personality based, right? It's all what is your definition of success? And I think that's the key. And if you as an agent, you as a business owner, me as a business owner, if we don't know what that definition looks like, how do we know when we get there? Right? How do you know that you've done X, Y, or Z the right way? How do you know when it's enough? How do you know when you get to now not answer the phone and go to the soccer game? What is your definition of success? And I think we lose that a lot of times when we're building this foundation and building the foundation of our business. We want to start at S instead of starting at A, right? We want to be at 14 instead of starting at 1, and having that definition of success, and you can evaluate that definition of success. It can change along the way. You can always use, that goal as a milepost and not a destination, right? So it's super, super important to have your definition of success, because whether you're chasing time, money, freedom, retiring your spouse, whatever it is, that's got to fit your passion. It's got to fit you and who you are as a person and who you're built to be,
Yeah.
right? Because everything else is just it will just it's thrown against the wall and it's going to bounce off. Um, to me, when I look at doing this, being in this business since 2006, what's more valuable to me? Obviously the money and this is just my perspective sitting here. Obviously, there's a certain level of financial gain that you have to achieve before you can go to the soccer game. Before you can go to the hockey game, before you can do all those things and take the vacations, you've got to get to a certain spot, right? But again, I think as agents, we when you get to that $5 or $10 million number, you've built a pretty significant business. We said that, right? You've done some things well. You're generating some income, but then the problem is going back to the sowing and reaping. You've got to reinvest in your business. If I owned a Domino's franchise and I never took money out of my profit, or I never took money out of the end of the month to advertise or to send out mailers or to buy more pepperoni, my Domino's franchise is going away,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
and I think you see there, like that's where good becomes the enemy of great. And for better or for worse, in our industry, we sensationalize agents that are doing 4 and 5 million, right? I mean, I think the top threshold for our board, I think they just upped it, but I mean, essentially, you got, I mean, if you're above 20 million, I mean,
Oh, you're
you're
elite.
a unicorn,
Yeah.
right? And you kind of look back and go like, well, if good's the enemy of great, and I say that because I don't, again, I always go back to like I have no judgment around what the goal is. My judgment comes into place with people when they have no goal, right? To
That's
what you're
exactly
saying,
right.
like, hey, you know what? If getting to, if making $250,000 a year and running a low key, I don't even mean like relationship reactional based business versus being very purposeful about it was your goal, awesome, right? No big deal. Where I think where we end up getting tripped up is that as humans, we're just naturally designed, right? Like our brain always pushes the goalposts, right? I love the analogy of like if it didn't, when we took our first step, we would have just stopped. We would have been
Yep.
like, done it, right? Boxes
Yep.
checked, but we didn't, right? We keep walking, we keep running. So your brain's always going to push the goalpost. So even if you don't think that's what you want to do, when you get to a $7 or $8 million mark, you kind of look up and go, well, what's next? If you're driven and you're looking to maximize, I always said, if I'm going to take 8 or 9 hours a day and be away from my wife and children, I want to make sure that I'm using them to the best of my ability so that I don't have to go home and tell the kids, hey, I can't go throw a baseball with you this afternoon because I need to go in my office and finish up some work, right? Because when I look at it, I say, well, that must mean I wasn't very intentional with the hours I had today. And so what I see, or what I caution some of my agents around, is that as they start to make that, you're right, baby needs shoes. There's times where bills got to get paid. I got to go do what it takes. Nothing wrong with that, right? Hustle and get it in. You get to a certain level and you go, all right, right. The basics are covered. We're comfort creatures. But ultimately, you go, if you start taking home 100% of that commission check and you don't ever, what you were saying, reinvest it back into the pepperonis, right? If you don't ever look up and go, well, to me, here's the beauty of business, right? Here's what gets me so excited is that I can't get a 500 or 5,000% return in the stock market
Right.
being
No,
a
not a
house.
chance.
The only way to get that level of return on my money is through owning businesses. And so when I look at it and go like as a realtor, like you own a business and you can actually go invest $10,000 a year and turn that into 150, $200,000 in revenue, which is phenomenal returns. You can't do that anywhere else. Ultimately, where I see agents make the mistake is they get to a level where they start making $250,000 a year top line revenue, and they start taking that money home, and they start changing their lifestyle, which ends up boxing them in because at some point they look up and go, "Oh, I want to grow," and it's like, okay, well, are you setting aside 30% of every commission check for investing back into your business, right? For expenses. I'm not saying you're going to need that up. I mean, if you're doing 5 million, no, you don't need 30% set aside. But wouldn't we be smarter to set that aside into an account versus starting to build a lifestyle off of it? I always say I'm gonna have a hard argument if I go home and ask my wife, like, hey, I'm gonna need you to not drive as nice of a car for the next year so that
Yeah.
I can go back and reinvest back into our business, right? That's a harder conversation versus me setting the money aside, right?
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think, and in your kind of in your experience, you know, what percentage of agents do you come across that actually run their business like a business? Like they know what the cost of lead acquisition is. They're putting that, they're reinvesting back into leadership seminars or coaching, or they're reinvesting into the lead sources that are working for them. They're building up those databases. I mean, what percentage of agents do you see, do you think? Just
Yeah, I'll say 0% of us, myself included, are doing it perfectly. I think you've got probably 5 to 10% that are looking for persistence, right? That are just hungry for knowledge, right? Being learning based, focusing on the 20%, being self accountable, like all of those pieces that you feel like, and you said it, I mean, maybe it is a personality style, right? Maybe it is this desire to be the best at what you do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'll be honest with you, it offends me a lot because a lot of people will say, I don't want to do what you do. And I kind of wonder if that's a defense maybe that people put up because maybe they're scared that they would fail if they attempted. I promise they would love to have what I have now, right? The be do have. Maybe don't want to do. I get like a lot of people like I don't want to be that intentional about my day, and I go like that's okay, maybe, right? Or is that a put off statement? The agents that are going to seminars, the agents that do have coaches. I hired my first coach when I didn't have the money. I knew, but when I looked at all the other top professionals in my space, when I find absolutes, I just go like everybody I know has a coach. It's not that Freddie Freeman doesn't know how to hit a home run. I guarantee he still has a hitting coach, right?
Promise.
And so when you look at professionals, right, when you look at top individuals in any industry, because it's just so hard when you're down in the thick of it, you just need that bird's eye view from a third party, right?
Well, and I'll use golf as I'm a big golfer, so I'll use golf as an analogy. It's so funny. I finally hired a swing coach 2 years ago, and the vision that I had in my head, and I think this is applicable to this conversation as well. The vision I had in my head of what I thought my swing was doing, and the vision that I saw I was actually doing, right, were completely different. And so many of us fall into this category, and it took a coach with another perspective, an outside view, to be able to put that on a video and say, this is what you're doing, this is where this is where this is, and if you'll change this here, your ball's going to do that. And by gosh, it did it. And then all I have to do is just try, and it was very uncomfortable, right? There's a minute that it's going to take some time to ingrain that thought, but it's not any different with that than it is in this business. We have this vision of what we believe we're doing. We have this story that we tell ourselves that our ego kind of builds for us that helps us compensate for whatever traumas or whatever things that happened to us when we were 6 or 7 years old. We now have this ego story we tell ourselves, and it keeps us from being great. And you said it a minute ago, good's the enemy of great. And so many agents are so attracted to the status quo. They want the thing, right? There's a lot that want to have that. They want to make $250,000 a year, but they're super comfortable at $60,000 a year. And if you push them to get past $60,000 a year, then they say things like they say to you, I just, I want what you have. I don't want what you did to get what you have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I always ask as a coach, what can we do to make incremental progress? Because I don't need you to go from 60 to
No, just need
250.
a little
Would
bit.
your life be would you be proud of yourself if you went to 75? Right? And what's the one thing that we really need to do? Oh, again, for me, I understand based off of what I've been told what to do to get a six pack of abs, right? It's not a knowledge issue, right? It's a behavior issue, right? It's why I need a physical fitness coach, people holding me accountable. And to me, that's all a great coach does, right? Is they ask you the questions, they get you to think a little bit different, they maybe get you to pivot a little bit on how you've naturally done something so that hopefully you get a different outcome, right?
Well, because we all bump up to that comfort spot, right? We all bump up against what we're used to, and sometimes that coach has to be the one that motivates you past that comfort level and pushes you a little more. Because again, if you want to get a six pack of abs, you know what to do, but at some point it starts to suck, right? At some point that really starts to hurt, and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. But when you've got somebody there saying, "Hey, give me two or three more. Let's do this today," and then you get comfortable with the uncomfort, right? You get comfortable with the pain. You get comfortable with doing three or four extra sets. You get comfortable with making four or five extra phone calls. You get comfortable with going to that event or hiring that coach, and you work your way through the pain of that commitment, right? Then all of a sudden, that's where the growth happens. That's when it really starts to click.
Yeah, my favorite thing of having a coach and being a coach isn't, I don't usually need the motivation to get started, right? Like I
Nope.
get it, it's going to be hard.
Yep.
It's the 30 or 40 days in when when it's not fun anymore, right? When you hit the valley of despair, right? And you kind of go like, okay, it's harder than I thought it was going to be. I'm not seeing the results as fast as I want to see them. Um, to me, like the biggest, I hope my boys leave this house knowing one thing, and it's, consistency over time, right? Time on task done consistently over time, persistence over perfection, right? I think anything we do, and without that person there, it's, oh, I heard about this today, and I'm going to go chase that. And I'm going to do that for 30 days. Oh, I heard about this today, and I'm going to go do this. Or, oh, I went to a seminar today. And it's like, I love people that go to seminars, but I made a rule to myself, like if I go to one, I have to wait 2 weeks before I implement change.
Well, that's
Because
good.
Otherwise, I have this knee-jerk reaction, and my whole organization's like, "Oh no, David's off on another roller coaster, right? And we've got to go along for the ride." And so, I know I'm running over on time. I want to be respectful of that for you. If I come back to the five mistakes, I think I can kind of summarize them a little bit, right? But number one, it's chasing things that you shouldn't chase, right? And the only way to really curb that or fix that is having a plan and having someone holding you accountable to plan. Number two, I think it's not setting your money aside for expenses. Again, I want to kind of drive that home, guys. If you go take it home, you got to pay Uncle Sam his portion
Yep.
of it. If you
Yep.
reinvest it back into your business, that's an expense that's tax deductible, right? So you get to write that off. So twofold there. On one, you're investing in yourself. Number two, you're saving on the taxes, right? I'd rather put it back into my business than take it home, right? Third thing kind of becomes not hiring leverage. We didn't touch on that a whole lot, but I do think people kind of shy away from um, uh, again, I'll try to drive it home real quick. Not hiring leverage. I hear a lot of agents like, why would I pay someone to do my transaction coordination?
Oh my gosh.
I can do it
Yeah.
better myself. And I'll take a line from my coach Dan Martell in his book Buy Back Your Time. 80% done is 100% awesome,
That's
right?
it.
One of my favorite lines. So it's like I'm not handing off my transaction coordination because I can't do it. I'm not handing it off because I can't do it better than someone else, no doubt. When I hand it off, they may actually only do it at 80% efficiency of what I would choose to do it at. And that's where agents' brains start going crazy like, no, my client wants me. I want my client to have a wow experience. NAR says 9 out of 10 of them are going to hire you again. So it's not because they do it so well or because you aren't best at doing it. It's because of the time that it buys you back to go do the things that are really important for you in your business. And so I hope somebody out there hears that and it kind of clicks to go, you're not handing it off because you can't do it or because they're quote unquote better at it. I get it. You're the best at everything on planet Earth. You're the only one, right? Ultimately, can you get the time back to go and invest it? Most agents are going to make somewhere between 150 to $750 an hour, depending upon their business. If you're the one doing your transaction coordination and your rate of pay is $250 an hour, you're essentially paying $250 an hour for transaction coordination, which in my mind is just dumb, right? Like it's so. All right, get me excited
Well,
about that third
well,
topic.
I tell my kids this all the time. You know, I was a police officer for 13 years, and so I carry some of that into to what I do now as a real estate owner and a real estate in this business. But I tell my kids all the time, just because you can doesn't mean you should,
That's,
right?
that's good advice.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I can paint a house, I can blow leaves, I can do all those things. But I promise you, like you said earlier, it's just not the best use of my time. I love that. I think a transaction coordinator for an agent, and if you don't use one, the first time you're going to use one, it may be a little tough. By the time you do two or three, you would pay triple that amount of money to that transaction coordinator to take that off your plate. I promise you,
Sure.
you will.
Yeah, and maybe you have to change the models and systems, but so be it, right? That's the 80% that just doesn't really drive your business. The fourth thing we talked about, and maybe we can do another episode on, is the real estate roller coaster, right? So many people working hard to get the business. A lot of $5 to $10 million producers know how to generate the business, but then they kind of look away and they go service the business for 30 to 45 days, and then they look up. And so you end up with this high and low and high and low. I always say, don't try to beat your best month. Go back and work on curbing your lowest 2 months, right? If we can take your lowest 2 months of last year and bring them up to the average, your business is going to grow substantially over that. And then number five, biggest mistake, both you and I know we're passionate about this, is just not having a coach, right? Not having somebody there. And that doesn't mean that you need to call and hire me and Aaron, right? Like that means that you just need to have somebody, a peer partner, a group that you're a part of, someone that's asking you questions that get you to think differently and then helping hold you accountable. No doubt all of us just by human nature are going to shy away or going to get distracted. Look, today, I mean, we all have a little bit of, focus problems, right? And so ultimately having Aaron involved in your life, having a coach involved in your life that's asking you a great question. What's your favorite question as a coach? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, you did put me on the spot. Favorite question as a coach. Probably my favorite, because I always start with the individual, right? I'm always trying to connect emotion to something. So probably my favorite question as a coach is what's a time in your life where you felt most emotionally invested in what you were doing?
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna steal that. Yep. I think I always love bringing it back to where else is that showing up in your life?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so if you're choosing not to play all in on work, where else is that showing up in your life, right? You made a commitment to me this week, or you made a commitment to me over the last month that you were going to accomplish X and you didn't. Where else is that showing up in your life, right? Are you making commitments to your spouse that maybe you aren't seeing through? Are you making commitments to your children that maybe you aren't seeing through? Does your audio and your video not line up? Because work is a rubber ball, right? It'll bounce back. If we screw it up, it's fine. It's work, right? It's our career. The spouse, the children, our spiritual life, our physical life can't be put on a shelf. If we neglect those are glass balls. They're going to break. And brother, I appreciate
Love
you
that.
spending some time with me today. I'd love to keep kind of this conversation going. I know we got a few topics that we'd like to kind of touch on and record. Guys, if you like these conversations, please drop us a letter, drop us a DM. Let us know topics you'd love to hear. We got, not saying we're perfect at it, but Aaron and I together, we've got what, almost 40 years of experience
It's
in this
pretty close
business.
to that. Yeah.
Couple over $1 billion in real estate sales sold, and several real estate companies under our belts. Hopefully, we can offer perspective to those that are listening in. Brother, thank you for your time today.
Oh man, I appreciate it, David. Thanks for the opportunity, and look forward to having another conversation.
All right, see you guys.
Yeah, man.